I am an ex-bodybuilder with the goal of now wanting to compete in the Hyrox World Championships in 2027. Safe to say, since making my transition from bodybuilding to Hyrox, there has been a lot that I have had to learn and a fair few mistakes made along the way. I've gone from basically structuring my entire week around bodybuilding and trying to build as much muscle as possible to now running multiple times per week, training for Hyrox, and trying to become genuinely a good endurance athlete. But throughout that transition, I think it's fair to say that I've managed to maintain a pretty respectable physique and held on to a lot of the muscle in which I've built throughout my bodybuilding days. And right now it seems like everyone's getting into running, whether that is running, Hyrox, hybrid training. A lot of people that spent years lifting weights and building muscle and now adding in a lot more endurance work into their routine. And naturally, one of the biggest concerns is, am I going to lose all my muscle that I've spent years building? The good news is, you don't have to. Running isn't automatically going to kill your gains. But if you all of a sudden add in running 4 or 5 times per week, train the exact same way in which you have been without adjusting your nutrition accordingly and prioritizing recovery, you are going to run into a fair few problems. So having made plenty of them mistakes myself, here are the 5 biggest things I'd focus on if I wanted to start running or training for something like Hyrox while maintaining as much muscle as possible. Number 1, keep strength training in. This sounds obvious, but if you want to maintain muscle, then you still need to train like you want to maintain muscle. Don't all of a sudden just replace all of your resistance training with running and Hyrox because now you've started training for it. I would aim for anywhere between 2 to 4 resistance training sessions per week, depending on your running load. I currently do 2 full upper body sessions per week. I don't train legs because I don't want them to be any bigger. My legs are the strongest muscle group across my physique, and it's safe to say I could probably lose a few inches on the legs in order to feel lighter on my feet for my runs. But when resistance training, keep the intensity in them sessions relatively high. Continue lifting heavy and progressing where you can. What probably does need to change is your overall volume. You can't necessarily take your old bodybuilding program and then just throw running and Hyrox on top of that. As your running load increases, you need fewer sets in the gym. You don't need ridiculously high volume, just focus on quality sets. The good thing is that when it comes to building muscle and maintaining muscle, you need a hell of a lot less stimulus in order to maintain muscle than what you do to build it. But ultimately, you still need to give your muscle a reason to stay. Just like when you may be dieting down for a holiday photo shoot prep bodybuilding show, you may not be seeing them numbers go up in the gym on your lifts like you were in your gaining phase. But ultimately, if you still train hard, you still train with intensity, you still apply a quality stimulus to the muscle, then you are going to give your muscle a reason to stay. So still keep in resistance training and ultimately still train hard. Number 2, eat enough protein and calories. This is likely where a lot of people go wrong. When you start running, your energy expenditure will increase significantly. If you don't account for that with your nutrition, then you will likely be in a much larger calorie deficit than what you originally thought. And if maintaining muscle is the goal, then that is not where you want to be spending months on end. Aim for roughly anywhere between 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and carbohydrates become increasingly important when you are combining resistance training, running, and Hyrox. They are going to be your main driver for fueling hard sessions and aiding recovery. Do not be afraid to increase your food intake when your training workload increases. If your workload goes up, then your food intake needs to support that. Number 3, control your running volume and intensity. One of the biggest mistakes that I see, in something that is very easily done when you first start running, is making every run hard. You do not need to finish each and every run absolutely destroyed just for it to be productive. Build majority of your mileage through easy aerobic running. Then use harder sessions such as intervals, threshold work, Hyrox specific sessions deliberately. The harder the session, the greater the recovery costs. Your overall running volume needs to increase gradually. If you wake up one day and then decide, oh, I'm going to start running, and you just decide to go out on a spontaneous 5 to 10K, then ultimately that is going to come at a very high fatigue cost and put you at risk of injury. Give your body time to actually adapt to running. The goal here is to build the engine without creating more fatigue than what you need to. Number 4, structure your week properly. This has been one of the biggest learning curves for me. Once you're doing both, you cannot think of your running program and your gym program as completely separate. They have to work together. Put in your hardest interval session right before a big leg day is only going to affect that subsequent session and vice versa. Separate your most demanding runs and resistance training sessions throughout the week where possible. And if you do need to lift and run on the exact same day and double up sessions, because I ultimately still have double training days, then give yourself that recovery time of at least 6 to 7 hours in between in order for you to get a few meals in, allow your body to shift that fatigue, so that way you're not necessarily affecting the subsequent session. And remember, Hyrox specific sessions count as genuine training stress. Things such as the sleds, burpees, wall balls, lunges, running, all create fatigue. You can't just add them sessions on top of your current training program and pretend like they don't count. As your endurance workload increases, something elsewhere may need to be tapered down. For example, like I mentioned earlier, my legs being one of my biggest, strongest muscle groups across my physique. I haven't trained legs in 2 months now, and they have not lost an inch in size. So ultimately, I do not need to create that fatigue with a resistance training session for my legs. I ultimately just add more volume into my runs per week in order to build that skill in running and ultimately get me better at Hyrox. The key take home here though is it's not just about what you train, it's whereabouts you put it. And last but not least, number 5, and likely the most important, prioritize your recovery. This is of course the least exciting point, but likely the most important. You only actually benefit from the training in which you can recover from. Aim for anywhere between 7 to 9 hours sleep per night. That is going to give you much more of an advantage when it comes to maintaining muscle mass as opposed to being sleep deprived day after day, week after week. Stay hydrated and make sure that you are replacing electrolytes when necessary. I literally used to just wake up and hydrate with electrolytes first thing each and every morning. I'm now also rehydrating post-session with electrolytes in order to kickstart that recovery and ensure that I can maximize my recovery in order to keep up with my training workload. Have genuine lower intensity days and rest days as well. Like I say, if your training workload is at a volume in which you simply cannot recover from, that is when you are going to be affecting subsequent sessions throughout the week. If your numbers start drastically coming down in the gym, then ultimately you are going to have a much harder job when it comes to maintaining your muscle. And with that being said, pay attention to your gym performance. If your gym numbers are continuing to fall, if your runs are getting worse, you're constantly tired and each and every session is feeling terrible, that is your body trying to tell you something. More training isn't always better training. We want quality throughout our sessions. We want to feel ready to train each and every time we step in the gym. We want quality over quantity always. Remember, you can only benefit from the training in which you can recover from. So with that being said, running is not going to automatically make you lose muscle. You can absolutely become a much better runner and Hyrox athlete whilst maintaining a muscular physique. I genuinely believe that is why Hyrox is as popular as what it is now, because majority of these guys that do Hyrox spend years, if not decades, building muscle first. And when you're seeing them line up on the start line and they're all jacked with shredded physiques and they ultimately have that engine and endurance to last the race, of course everyone's going to want a bit of that. But with that being said, you can't necessarily train exactly like a bodybuilder whilst also trying to train like an endurance athlete. Something has to give, and usually that is unnecessary training volume rather than training intensity or quality. Keep lifting hard, eat enough, be smart with your training volume, be smart when structuring your training week, and recover properly. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that my training is absolutely perfect. I've found it very mentally challenging to bring down that volume in my resistance training sessions, adding in more running and Hyrox specific work, and ultimately having that trust in the process to know that what I am doing is going to maintain the muscle in which I've spent years building. But for where I'm at right now in my journey, I have managed to maintain a lot of muscle. If anything, I'm in the process now of trying to lose a little bit in order to become a better endurance athlete. I'm enjoying my training, which is one of the main things, and I always feel well recovered and my training is progressing nicely. And that's ultimately keeping me extremely motivated with the goal of now trying to qualify for the Hyrox World Championships in 2027. But for those of you guys that have come from a bodybuilding background, a resistance training background, and you're ultimately now wanting to build that engine and improve your overall endurance, if you ensure that you focus on those 5 things there, you are going to have an easy job at maintaining the muscle in which you have worked hard to build. That is everything for this video. See you in the next one.